I never wanted to return to the old house by the marsh. It stood at the edge of town, surrounded by withered trees and an overgrown yard, a relic of my childhood summers. But when my mother passed away, the property landed in my name, a house that had once been my great-grandfather's, then passed down through the family until no one seemed to want it. We lived in the city. We had comfortable apartments, modern conveniences. Nobody had time for an aging, mossy old place with leaky floors and a sagging porch. But sentiment or circumstance, maybe both, brought me back here when the paperwork settled. I took a sabbatical from work, loaded up the car, and drove out to see what shape the house was in. For the first few days, the weather was pleasant enough, just warm enough to keep the dust swirling in the empty rooms, with the mild hiss of the wind weaving through cracks in the windows. I told myself I'd hire an inspector, figure out if the place was worth saving, and return to the city as soon as possible. Despite the gloom of the peeling wallpaper and the musty carpets, something about the old house felt oddly comforting. The memory of chasing fireflies near the porch steps when I was little, or climbing the rickety staircase to explore the attic. I could still smell the faint hint of pipe tobacco that lingered in my great-grandfather's study. He'd passed away before I was born, but the stories about him always intrigued me. Tales of a rugged huntsman who prowled the woods, collecting trophies of deer and game fowl, a man who thrived in thunderstorms rather than hiding indoors like the rest of us. Maybe that's why I lingered longer than I intended. Maybe that's why I stayed through the first big storm that blew in, rather than fleeing at the sight of blackening skies. It was a decision that changed everything. I'd arrived in late spring. The local forecast predicted some possible thunderstorms over the next few days. Nothing out of the ordinary for the region. I kept half an ear on the weather radio but didn't pay much attention. My main focus was tidying up, deciding which furniture to salvage and which to toss. The old house had no shortage of dusty corners, squeaking doors and spider webs to keep me busy. On the afternoon the weather took a turn. I was in the attic. That attic was a labyrinth of old trunks, battered suitcases, and crates stacked precariously high. I found moth-eaten blankets, chipped porcelain figurines, and water-stained photographs from the 1930s. Most of the boxes contained junk, except for a single wooden trunk with brass hinges that caught my eye. As I rummaged through it, I discovered a worn leather-bound book. Something about it felt special. The spine had no title. But when I opened the cover, I realized it was a hunting diary. Neat, cramped handwriting on yellowed pages. Flipping through, I recognized the name scrawled in old ink on the first page. Grant Pickering, my great-grandfather. My pulse quickened. This was his diary. I'd never known he kept one, nor had my mother mentioned it. Each entry had a date, some from as early as 1929. The handwriting was sometimes shaky, sometimes bold, detailing hunts in the nearby woods, notes on deer tracks, weapon maintenance, the best vantage points for turkey season. Further in, though, the tone changed. His neat script became more frenetic, paragraphs interrupted by scrawled lines. Rain pelted the attic's roof as I read, June 1st, 1934. Another storm rolling in. Watched from the porch with the rifle at my side. Feels like something hunts along with the thunder. Deer spooked, birds silent. Could just be my imagination, but my skin crawls with every flash of lightning. June 3rd, 1934. I saw it. Not clearly, but enough to know it's no normal beast. It moves when the thunder roars, skulking in the darkness between flashes. When the lightning strikes, it seems to come alive, like the light charges it. Something in the storm feeds it. Almost looks human in shape, but elongated, crouched. Left footprints in the mud, bigger than a man's with too many toes. Suddenly, a crack of thunder rattled the house, bringing me back to the present. I glanced at the attic's single round window. Outside, the sky had turned an angry grey, clouds churning. The storm arrived faster than expected. Part of me wanted to keep reading. Another part told me to shut the trunk, pretend this old diary was just the ramblings of an eccentric huntsman, and carry on with my day. But I couldn't let it go. I skimmed the next few pages. My great-grandfather wrote about hunts that ended in terror, about hearing heavy breathing outside his window during storms, about lightning striking trees and glimpses of some gnarled figure illuminated in the flash. But the line that made my blood run cold was near the end. It's not the thunder you should fear. It's the silence after. That line was underlined twice. as if it were a dire warning. I shivered, though the attic was warm. Outside, a bright flash lit the dusty rafters. The subsequent thunder boomed so loudly it shook the house. I nearly dropped the diary. The hammering rain on the roof nearly drowned out the storm's next rumble. I quickly shut the trunk and made my way downstairs. There was something disquieting about reading these tales in the very house where they had been written, with a thunderstorm raging overhead. I told myself it was just an old legend, maybe a family story gone wild. Yet that warning line echoed in my mind. It's not the thunder you should fear, it's the silence after. I spent that evening in the living room, reading more of the diary by lamplight while the storm howled outside. I had no TV or internet set up in the old house, so reading was my only entertainment. That or letting my imagination run wild with the thunder. I was halfway through a chilling passage, my great-grandfather describing how he aimed a shotgun at a moving shadow in the orchard. When the power blinked out, the lamp died, plunging the room into darkness. Lightning flickered, bathing the room in staccato bursts of white. I closed the diary, fumbling for the flashlight I'd left on the coffee table. The thunder boomed again, rattling the glass panes. In that brief second of light, my eyes darted to the window, half expecting to see some lanky figure outside, pressed to the glass. Of course, there was nothing but sheets of rain. I found the flashlight and clicked it on. The old house creaked ominously in the wind. Stop scaring yourself, I thought, heading to the kitchen to check the fuse box. The storm likely knocked out the power lines, so the fuse box wouldn't help. Sure enough, the entire neighborhood was probably dark. I opened the back door to look out toward the distant fields, bracing myself against the wind. The world was pitch black except for the explosive flashes of lightning. No lights in the neighbor's yard either. The farmland beyond was shapeless and drenched, the road invisible. A bright flash revealed the skeletal outlines of the orchard near the back of the property, those twisted apple trees my great-grandfather had planted decades ago. They still bore fruit, small and bitter. For a split second in that flash, I thought I saw a human-like silhouette standing in the orchard rows, but the next bolt of lightning showed only empty space. The thunder roared, rolling away into the distance, and for a moment the quiet that followed seemed deafening. My heart thumped. It's not the thunder you should fear. A particularly violent gust slammed the door out of my hand. I yelped, stumbling back inside, forcing it shut against the gale. My breath came in short gasps. Darkness pressed in once more. I felt foolishly afraid, imagining all sorts of horrors in the swirling rain. I returned to the living room, rummaged for some candles and matches. Great-grandfather's diary lay on the table, faintly visible in the flashlight's glow. I considered reading more, but my nerves were already fried. Instead, I lit 2 candles, set them on the mantel, and tried to calm myself by listening to the rain. It's only a storm, I told myself. We get them every year. There's no monster in the orchard. But a tiny voice in my head whispered, he saw it. He wrote it down. It only appears in storms. By midnight, the fury of the downpour had eased a bit. The wind still howled, but the thunder was less frequent. I decided to try sleeping, hoping that by morning the power might be restored. I tucked the diary into a desk drawer. I wasn't quite ready to part with it, and locked the doors. Rain hammered on the roof as I climbed the stairs. Lightning still pulsed now and then, brightening the hallway. Right before I entered the bedroom, a lull descended, a sudden, uncanny hush. No thunder, no wind, not even the drip of rain from the eaves. The silence stretched impossibly long. My pulse thudded in my ears, and in that moment I heard something else. The faintest scratch at the window at the far end of the hall, a scraping like nails on glass, followed by a muted exhalation, shh, a breath. My blood went cold. I stood frozen, every muscle tense, hardly daring to blink. Then the thunder returned in a crackling boom. The wind picked up, and I almost collapsed with relief. The noise outside drowned out any further sound. I bolted into my bedroom, slammed the door, and forced myself under the covers, fully clothed. Sleep did not come easily, but exhaustion eventually won, and I drifted into restless dreams of lightning and twisted shapes. Sunlight creeping through the window woke me. My eyes felt gritty from lack of sleep. Somehow the storm had passed overnight without my noticing. The air smelled fresh, the sky outside a brilliant blue. I almost laughed at my own terror from the night before. Daylight made everything seem normal. The orchard just a row of damp trees. The yard scattered with fallen branches. With a grimace, I checked the lights. Still no power. My phone battery was near dead, and I had no cell service out here. I considered driving back into town, maybe staying in a motel until the power was fixed. But first, I wanted to see if the storm had caused any damage. Grabbing my jacket, I stepped outside. The yard was soggy, pocked with puddles. Broken twigs littered the grass. My father's old truck parked by the shed was spattered with mud. Birdsong drifted from somewhere across the road, a normal note in the otherwise silent morning. I exhaled. Everything's fine, I told myself, scanning the orchard. No monstrous footprints, no sign of some unnatural presence. I decided to check around the perimeter, see if the orchard fence was still intact. As I walked, I noticed an odd pattern in the mud behind the house-sweeping arcs, as though something large had dragged or brushed across it. No footprints, just elongated smears. My pulse quickened. Could that be from a fallen branch? Possibly. Yet I didn't see any branches lying there. I swallowed and continued. The orchard was still dripping from last night's rain, leaves shining in the sun. Nothing unusual, aside from a distinct hush. Usually after a storm, I'd expect more birds chirping, but the orchard felt deserted. Even the crows kept their distance. Finally, I circled back, telling myself I was being paranoid. But the memory of that scraping noise at the hall window wouldn't let me relax. I headed inside, rummaging for the diary. Maybe the next entries would shed more light on what exactly my great-grandfather thought he saw, and how to banish that fear from my mind. The next set of entries, dated 1934 to 1935, painted a grim picture. My great-grandfather wrote of repeated encounters during storms. Times he'd hear breathing near the window, or see a silhouette crossing the yard when the lightning flared. He tried telling neighbors, but none believed him. Some teased that the old huntsman had finally gone senile. September 9th, 1934. They won't listen. They say it's a wild dog or me seeing shadows. I know better. I found claw marks on the barn door, each gash a foot long. I heard it panting in the orchard at dusk. When the lightning stops, that's when it creeps closer. The thunder covers its movement, but the real danger is that calm that follows the flash. October 3rd, 1934. I set up a watch during last night's storm. Didn't blink all night, rifle loaded. Storm ended near 3 a.m., thunder rolling away. In the sudden hush, I heard it again. Closer this time. I fired a shot at the shape in the yard, but it moved too fast. Found nothing at dawn but deep scratches in the dirt. Tracks? They vanish after a few steps. I shuddered. His descriptions were so vivid, yet so unbelievable. A creature that only comes during storms, feeding on the flashes of lightning, or drawn to them. It read like a horror story. Yet I recalled my own fear in the hallway, thunder suddenly gone, replaced by that faint scratching. My skin prickled again. The diary's final pages were the most disturbing. He wrote about capturing glimpses of the creature, tall, emaciated, with elongated arms and hunched shoulders. Its eyes, when the lightning illuminated them, glowed pale like an animal's. It left no trace except for strange smears in the mud, as if its feet or hands were webbed or oddly shaped. He never got a clear shot. It seemed to vanish whenever he fired. December 1st, 1934. I can't do this alone. Mary wants to leave. She's terrified for the children, but if we abandon the house, who knows where it will go next? It's a storm stalker, a silent predator after the thunder's echo. The farmland is wide. If others don't believe me, they might get caught unaware. His final entry was dated mid-December. I hear the wind rising, the thunder on the horizon. Mary's gone to her sister's. I must face this. If anything happens to me, let it be known. It's not the thunder you should fear. It's the silence after. And that was it. The diary ended. My mother once told me great-grandfather Grant had died of pneumonia that winter. Or so the story went. Now I wondered if that was the whole truth. Did he encounter the creature one last time? There were no details. The next page was blank except for a few dark stains. I slammed the diary shut, heart hammering. The storm in the night, the scraping at my window, the smears in the mud. I couldn't dismiss it all as imagination. But was the creature real? Or was it just an old family legend that wormed into my subconscious? Still, I couldn't ignore how my great-grandfather's words matched too closely with my own experiences. A silent predator after the thunder's echo. Could it be that, nearly a century later, that same presence lingered here? Awakened by last night's violent storm, I spent the afternoon pacing the house, glancing at the sky. The forecast had said scattered storms might continue throughout the week. Another big one could roll in tonight or tomorrow. My nerves were shot. Each time I heard a distant rumble, I froze, expecting the monster to appear at the window, but most of the day stayed clear if a bit windy. By evening, I decided I couldn't just hide inside. If storms were truly a trigger, maybe I should drive back to town, stay in a motel, and sort the house out later. I didn't want to risk another night in total darkness, hearing that hideous breathing. I packed a small bag, grabbed my phone charger, and headed out to my car. The old gravel driveway was soggy but drivable. I turned the key and nothing happened. The engine refused to start. I tried again, pumping the pedal, hearing only feeble clicks. Dead battery or some other mechanical failure. Great. My phone, nearly drained, had no signal this far out. I cursed under my breath. The only other vehicle was my father's old truck, which I wasn't sure was functional. Still, it was worth a try. I rummaged for the keys on the peg by the kitchen, found them, hurried to the truck, and discovered the engine block was missing a battery as well. Probably my father had removed it for safety or storage, never replaced it. So I was effectively stranded. My best option would be walking the 2 miles to the nearest neighbor, but the sky was already darkening, an ominous bank of clouds gathering on the horizon. If another storm hit while I was on foot, I'd be out in the open. The memory of my great-grandfather's desperate warnings clenched my stomach in knots. I decided to wait, see if the storm would blow over. I could always walk tomorrow morning under safer conditions. As dusk settled, I stared at the orchard again through the window. The wind picked up, rattling branches. My father's old hunting rifle hung on the living room wall, a decorative piece, presumably non-functional. But I decided to check it anyway. It looked old, the stock worn. I had no ammunition, and even if I did, I wasn't sure if it was safe to fire, but clinging to it made me feel less helpless. Outside, lightning flickered in distant clouds. The wind moaned under the eaves. I swallowed hard. Another storm was rolling in. Maybe it'll just be a light shower, I tried to reassure myself. But the rumble of thunder growing closer told me otherwise. Night fell, and the thunder began in earnest. I lit candles around the living room again, made sure the doors and windows were locked. The air felt heavy, electric. By 9 o'clock, rain pelted the roof, lightning flashing every few seconds. I huddled in an armchair with the useless rifle across my lap, wondering if my great-grandfather had felt the same bone-deep dread. The wind howled, lightning snapped. The thunderclaps came in quick succession, each one shaking the house. I caught glimpses of swirling rain through the windows, the orchard thrashing. Then the thunder abruptly died, leaving the storm's hiss of rain, but none of its booming voice. The sudden hush swallowed my heartbeat. My ears rang in the silence. It's not the thunder you should fear. The words repeated in my head. I gripped the rifle, scanning the dark windows. Outside, the rain still poured, but the thunder was gone, as though something had stolen its roar. Lightning flared again, illuminating the orchard in ghostly white. No figure, just the silhouettes of trees bending in the gale. My breathing hitched. Another flash, and for an instant, I saw the orchard path. Empty. Then came the breathing low, raspy and undeniably close. Ha! My scalp prickled. It sounded as though something large stood just outside the living room wall. I heard a scraping against the wooden boards like claws. My mouth went dry. Lightning flashed again, revealing a shape at the window, tall, distorted, half-hunched. I couldn't see its face, only a suggestion of limbs pressed against the glass. Then darkness. My entire body seized in panic. I fumbled the rifle, raised it toward the window, though I had no ammunition. Another flash. The window was empty, the shape gone. But the breathing continued. Ugh. It moved around the side of the house, accompanied by a long, dragging noise, as if it scraped across the siding. I wanted to run, but run where? Outside in the storm with that thing? My chest tightened. Think. My great-grandfather had tried shooting it. That didn't help. He tried waiting it out. That nearly drove him mad. The next lightning strike lit the entire living room, a strobe of white. Through the window behind me, I caught a reflection or silhouette something crouched on the porch outside. Thunder did not follow. The hush was absolute, broken only by that labored ha-ha-ha breath. I backed away from the window, pushing the armchair as if it might block the glass. The doorknob rattled. I nearly screamed. Something was testing the door gently at first, then a harder pull. I pressed my weight against it, though I wasn't sure if it would hold if the creature truly wanted in. My mind whirled. What do I do? Remembering the diaries, I recalled lines about how the creature seemed supercharged by lightning, but also wary of bright lights. The storms gave it cover, but the lightning's flash was ironically what made it visible. Could I use that to my advantage somehow? The flicker of an idea formed. My phone was nearly dead, but if I used its flashlight in the darkness, maybe I could startle it. It felt like a flimsy plan, but anything was better than cowering. I scrambled to the coffee table, rummaged for my phone. 5% battery left. Good enough. I turned on the flashlight, a narrow beam of white. Holding the rifle in one hand, knowing it was worthless, and the phone in the other, I edged toward the front window. The doorknob had stopped rattling, replaced by an eerie quiet. The only sound was the pounding of my heart. Lightning flashed outside, revealing the orchard once more. Then darkness. I inched to the window, phone light trembling in my grip. Rain lashed the glass. My own reflection stared back at me, eyes wide, hair plastered to my forehead. For a moment I saw nothing else. Then a shriek tore through the silence, raw and guttural, an unearthly sound that made the walls vibrate. I staggered back, phone beam flailing. The creature must be on the porch or near the door. My legs felt like jelly, but I forced them to move. Gathering whatever courage I had left, I swung the phone beam toward the door, flinging it open in a burst of adrenaline. Rain blew in, drenching the threshold. Lightning flashed overhead. In that strobe, I saw it clearly for the first time, crouched at the corner of the porch. 7 feet tall if it stood upright, skin a strange mottled grey. Its limbs were elongated, fingers ending in something like claws. Its head was turned toward me, eyes glinting a milky white in the brief glare. A gaping mouth revealed rows of short, jagged teeth. It hissed at the sudden light, staggering back. I screamed without meaning to. The creature lunged, but with the next lightning flash it seemed to recoil, as if the brightness disoriented it. I pointed my phone flashlight at it. The small beam lost in the downpour, but enough to make it hiss again. Then it moved so fast I could barely track it, skittering off the porch into the orchard, leaving a trail of muddy claw prints across the boards. Panting, I stumbled outside, phone light aimed ahead. The orchard rustled with frantic movement. Another flash of lightning revealed the creature weaving between trees, climbing or bounding forward with unnatural speed. My mind screamed, "Stay inside." But a surge of desperation made me follow, slipping in the mud as I descended the porch steps. I had no plan, just an instinct that if I didn't drive it away now, I might never escape it. Trees whipped around in the wind, leaves slapping my face. Thunder was still absent, the storm locked in a bizarre silence except for the rain and wind. Between flashes, I caught glimpses of the creature's silhouette, darting deeper into the orchard. I pressed forward, nearly dropping the phone and rifle in the mud. Then the next bolt of lightning arced across the sky, and I saw the monster crouched about 20 yards away, half turned toward me. Its eyes glowed faintly, locked on mine. My phone beam flickered. The battery was nearly gone. If it died, I'd be blind out here. I remembered how my great-grandfather wrote about using a rifle. I had no bullets, but maybe the noise could scare it. With shaking hands, I pulled back the old lever, aiming the empty weapon at the beast. I squeezed the trigger, expecting only a click, but the rifle fired a deafening crack that stunned me. The recoil nearly sent me stumbling. I had no idea there was one shell left in the chamber, perhaps a misfired round from decades ago. Startled, the creature shrieked. The muzzle flash lit the orchard for an instant. Then darkness again. In that moment I realized the bullet must have gone wide, missing the creature, but the unexpected shot had done something. The beast reeled, howling. Lightning flickered overhead. The monster whirled, bounding away deeper into the orchard. Branches snapped in its wake. Part of me wanted to chase it to ensure it was gone, but fear pinned my feet to the ground. My phone battery dipped to 1%. The orchard was a maze of darkness. If the creature decided to circle back, I'd be helpless. I turned and ran, slipping on wet grass, branches clawing at my arms. My lungs burned. Somehow, I reached the house, flung myself inside, and kicked the door shut. My phone died at that exact second, the flashlight blinking out. I was left in pitch-black darkness, panting, water dripping from my clothes onto the floorboards. Outside, the wind howled, but I heard no more shrieks, no more scraping. The monstrous presence had retreated for now. I collapsed against the wall, heart pounding. Lightning continued to flash through the windows, but the thunder remained eerily absent. The house groaned in the wind, and the orchard's branches rattled. But no heavy breathing approached the door. Eventually, maybe an hour later, maybe more, the storm began to wane. Rain slowed to a soft drizzle. A distant rumble of thunder finally returned, fading into the night. With it came a strange peace. I felt tears on my cheeks, though I was still uncertain if it was rain or actual crying. My entire body trembled, a delayed reaction to the terror and adrenaline. I spent the rest of the night huddled in a corner, candles flickering, the empty rifle clutched in my hands like a talisman. I expected every gust of wind or creak of wood to herald the creature's return, but it never came. The orchard stayed silent, the hush broken only by gentle drips from the eaves. At some point, exhaustion claimed me. I dozed off. When I opened my eyes again, pale daylight streamed through the window. The storm had passed completely, leaving only soggy ground and a swirl of mist. No sign of the monster, but the memory clung to me, as real as my own heartbeat. In the grey morning light, I forced myself to check the yard, half expecting to see claw marks or footprints. The porch bore deep gouges in the wood, some muddy smears, but nothing else. The orchard behind the house was soaked, the soil churned by the storm. I found a few broken branches, a small tuft of odd, bristly hair caught on a trunk. It looked greyish, coarse, definitely not from a deer or raccoon. I shuddered, not daring to touch it. That was enough for me. I gathered my most essential belongings, packed them into a single duffel bag. The rest of my clothes and items could wait. If I had to hitchhike to the neighbor's house, I would. I needed to leave this place. Before I left, I fetched my great-grandfather's diary from the desk drawer. I ran a hand over the worn leather. Should I take it or leave it here? In the end, I slipped it into my bag. People needed to know what lurked during these storms, or at least I needed proof of my own sanity. Outside, the sky was calm, the morning air heavy with moisture. I started walking down the gravel road. My legs felt unsteady. Each time I heard a rustle in the bushes, my heart thundered. But the creature was gone, presumably hiding or retreating to wherever it came from. As I rounded the bend, I glanced back at the old house for what might be the last time, its peeling paint, sagging porch, orchard behind it. It looked harmless, just an old farmhouse, but I knew the truth that slithered among its storms. I found a neighbor who let me use his phone to call a tow truck and jumpstart my car. I drove into town, where I rented a motel room for the night, not caring about the cost. Over the next few days, I arranged for the house to be inspected. I considered selling the property outright. Part of me wanted to burn it down just so no one else would ever spend a stormy night there. Still, my rational mind doubted if the creature would remain confined to that place. If it thrived on storms, could it roam further? The possibility chilled me. I thought about my great-grandfather's final words. Perhaps he tried to confront the beast, hoping to end its hold on the land once and for all, but failed. Now, months later, I'm living in the city again, far from farmland. I keep the diary locked in a desk drawer, along with the memory of that terrifying night. Yet each time the forecast calls for thunderstorms, my chest tightens, and I find excuses to stay indoors or drive somewhere else. I've become hypersensitive to the roll of thunder, waiting to see if it suddenly cuts out, listening for that dreaded hush. Because I know, deep in my bones, that it's not the thunder you should fear, it's the silence after. There are nights when the sky flickers with lightning beyond my apartment window. The thunder rumbles, then fades. For a heartbeat, the world seems to hold its breath. And in that silent pause, I swear I hear a faint, ragged breathing just outside the glass. My hands shake, recalling those elongated claws, that twisted silhouette in the orchard. I can't prove it's real. Maybe no one will believe me, just as they dismissed my great-grandfather's warnings. But I have the diary, the torn-up porch floor, the bruises on my arms from fleeing through trees. I have my own nightmares. That's enough to remind me. Some horrors ride on the tail of the storm, hidden by thunder's roar, stalking just beyond the flash of lightning. And when the thunder falls silent, that's when you know it's here, breathing, waiting. So if you ever find yourself alone during a violent storm, lightning splitting the sky, rain hammering on the roof, listen carefully. If the thunder suddenly stops, if an unnatural hush smothers the air, and you hear something breathing in the darkness, don't investigate. Don't open the door, because once it has your scent, there may be no escape. Remember, it's not the thunder you should fear, it's the silence after,